Hi all, thank you so much for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about the California Community College's Bachelor's Degree Pilot Program, and we're kind of just going to analyze it based off of a few years' data. My name is Veronica Valdez.
My name is Luciano Morales.
And my name is Mirna Cabrera.
All right, so on our presentation, we will elaborate on the background of the programs, such as, for example, our stakeholders and participants, also the approved bachelor's degree programs as well, and which community colleges has participated in this pilot. We will also discuss the basic requirements of the program. Additionally, we will share the data that was made available by the evaluation and their outcomes, as well as the assessment of the pilot and how we actually determined, for example, more or less that it's a formative evaluation with a program-oriented approach. We will also share the weaknesses and strengths of this pilot program, but most importantly, how recommendations and potential program improvements have been highlighted by us, because it is extremely important that this dissemination of findings are disseminated to the stakeholders. All right, so who are our stakeholders? Our stakeholders are actually students, administrators, faculty, and also workforce partnerships that are all different per college. Hence, we have about 15 programs that were approved at these community colleges. For example, in Figure 2, we can see on the list of the programs that were actually approved by the California Community College Board of Governors. This is thanks to the exception in September 2014 on Chapter 747 of the 2014 Senate Bill 850 block, which actually authorized the California community colleges to offer bachelor's degrees on a pilot basis at least 50 community colleges. Now, amongst these colleges, for example, are Antelope Valley, Rio Hondo, Santa Monica, Cypress, and actually others as well. And you can see this information on the right-hand side of Figure 2. On the left-hand side, however, we can see the programs that were approved. And for example, we have programs in automotive technology, dental hygiene, and health information management. Now, one thing that we wanted to highlight is that if the program has a footnote, like a small little a, that means that this program was approved at 2 colleges, which makes an actual total of 15 approved bachelor's degrees, thanks to Chapter 747 of the 2014 Senate block. So, in order for these community colleges to participate, they had to meet actually a few basic requirements and justify them. For example, the BA programs selected at these institutions had to address unmet workforce needs in their regions. And what this means is that there had to be a high demand for these particular programs in order for those to be offered. And also, they had to consult with the University of California and also the California State University Public Systems. The Chancellor's Office had to sit down and make sure that these programs were not going to be duplicated or overlapped in both of these other 2 public systems. Another thing that I wanted to just highlight as well is that this pilot was actually also required to provide enrollment projections and to provide a plan to for administering and funding the program. So the tuition was increased a little bit more, and also financial aid was available. But nevertheless, the benefits of this program was that at least 51% of students stated that if the program was not offered, then they would have never taken this opportunity.
For the data of the student participation, here it's reflected of the three first cohorts of the student participation. So from 2016 to 2017 academic school year through 2018 and 2019. While the data of the first two cohorts is out, the last cohort is not presented since that data was not yet reported at that time. But they also reviewed some of the surveys that were done through the community colleges in the colleges that had these pilot programs. And these surveys were given to some of the graduates, and what was found is that some programs varied in size. Some were very limited with student interest, but other programs who had associate programs did not concur or concurred with the bachelor's program, and it didn't have a natural pipeline for students to matriculate into upper division courses without having conflict. Many of the programs made that effort to cater to more students by adding multiple online classes or hybrid courses to increase the convenience for student participation. So that was something useful for students, which was analyzed and reflected in the surveys. But the participation in this report for this section of the three cohorts just shows the different transgression of what every year had a little increase. Not a lot of data was presented on why the last cohort was smaller. It just says that they successfully have been still getting students to participate into these programs. For the program in the beginning of 2016 and 2017, the overall third year graduation rate is 75%, somewhat higher than the graduation rate for a community college who transfers to the CSU system, which is a 70%. In 2017 and 2018, which includes all 15 programs, the second year graduation rate was 70% to 30% higher than the CSU system rate, which was 41%. And third year rates for the 2016 and 2017 cohort varied from 50% for the Antelope Valley College to 96% for Foothill. The 2 years rates for 2017 and 2018 cohorts varied from 15 to 100%, which includes Cypress College in that. And for the next second slide, kind of talks about different student population who was there or who received services from this program and were participants. And in this, we see something interesting, which was the numbers of Latino students who attend these schools. So the number of Latino students who are in this school was 47%. Yet in the pilot program, there was only 29% of these students attending and being part of participants in this program, which was disproportionately higher or lower than the white students, who was much higher and with a different rate of students. So we just see the middle column of the overall student body at the pilot program, at the pilot college, and the column on the left, the first column, the pilot program percentage of what these students make up. So we see the different rates, and one of the biggest concerns was the number of students within the college and the number of students who were supported by this at different proportions. And for the next slide, we kind of talk about the graduation rates across the program. So no official data on the labor market has been presented from this, because all of this information is self-reported as well. So the response rate for this was high. It was 79%, and on average, students who graduated also included information about salary rates, but all the programs varied, in which kind of shows what cohorts are which. Cypress College had a cohort of 2017 and 2018 had almost a 100% graduation rate, and we see the different cohorts. The lighter color is a 2016-2017, which is the first or the second cohort that went in, and then 2017 and 2018, which has almost across the board the highest graduation rate, except for a few colleges, which is Skyline and other schools like Shasta. But that the information of their different graduation rates and reasonings is not presented within the program evaluation. So the outcome for these students, this self-reported information demonstrated that students who graduated in 2018 reported their current annual salary as of September of 2019 to be $28,000 higher than their salary prior to enrolling into the bachelor's degree program. For students who graduated in 2019, the following year, their current salary annual rates was on average $12,000 higher than the prior to the enrollment in the pilot program. So 2/3 of the graduates also reported that their bachelor's degree program helped them obtain their current positions. So it did support their transition in education or their educational goal. But here we don't have additional information on why the year of 2019 graduates made less income or reported that the income was lower or that higher salary pay was lower than the previous year. Despite the increase in salary for the graduates, there's no data on or information regarding that difference.
And so for our assessment of the evaluation, we've concluded that this type of evaluation is a formative evaluation because of the fact that this evaluation was conducted at the beginning or because of the fact that this was a pilot program. And so it's not summative because it's not at the end of this program. Rather, the community college system is rather looking at this as a beginning and hoping to expand on the 15 community colleges and really expand and hoping to make this go to the all 115 community colleges. And so we have identified the approach as well, and the approach that we've identified for this program is the program-oriented approach because of the fact that the evaluation really focused on whether the program was meeting its learning objectives, whether students were meeting the learning objectives as well and learning goals. And so because of it, and the evaluators gave recommendations on how to improve the program or some suggestions for alternative ways to go about the program. And so therefore we think that this was a program-oriented approach. This evaluation could have, in theory, also been a different type of approach. And specifically, we think that it could have been a decision-oriented approach because, again, if this was at the beginning, which it was a pilot program, at the end of this evaluation, depending on what the results were, then the community college system as a whole could have determined whether they were in fact going to keep the bachelor's programs at community colleges or whether to get rid of them as a whole or whether to change them or how to change them to improve. And so this could have also been a decision-oriented approach should the evaluators have taken that role and whether it would have benefited the community college system as well. And so continuing our assessment, there were 4 types of stakeholders that were identified through the evaluation, which were faculty, administrators, students, and the workforce representatives. Each of these had like a role that they played throughout the evaluation. But something we did want to point out about this evaluation was that it lacked detail. It didn't specify how various access to the stakeholders was achieved. And so we don't exactly know how they reached out to faculty, administrators, did they reach out to past students? We don't exactly know how all of that worked. And then we also had a question in regards to how the questions changed based on participants. And so we imagine that the questions asked to students were very different than the questions that they would ask the workforce representatives, but there were no explicit questions that were listed in this report. And so we don't exactly know how these questions were changed or what types of questions were asked to each of the various stakeholders and participants of this study. And so some of the strengths that we've identified of this evaluation is that it was short and concise. It was very easy to read. It was very legible. And it had a lot of graphics to help us identify and realize what was going on, especially to put a visual to it as well. All of the graphics that were shown through earlier in the presentation were all included in the evaluation report. And so it made it easier for us to see. And another great strength that we have identified is the fact that they provide recommendations for improvements of the program itself, but they also identify some recommendations for some alternatives. And so instead of improvements, they also provided alternatives in case the improvements wouldn't necessarily work, or it gave the option available to the community college systems to determine how to move forward with this information. Some of the weaknesses that we've identified was the fact that there were a lot of areas that were repetitive, and the fact that some statistics or some objectives were noted maybe 3 or 4 times. And so although it was very short and concise, we also found that it was very repetitive throughout, and it was ambiguous. As mentioned earlier, we don't exactly know what questions were asked specifically of students or how they were able to receive these numbers and statistics that they received. We don't exactly know what questions were asked. And so one last thing that we identified was also that the fact that it did not have a logic model. And so that could have provided some idea in terms of like what the goals were for the program and so forth. And so we think that that would have been important. And so some of the final thoughts that we have was the fact that the dissemination of findings were not necessarily they weren't found anywhere else on the internet. So we were only able to find this report on the Legislative Analyst's Office, which is the organization that conducted this evaluation. We looked at each of the individual colleges to look to see if this evaluation report was printed anywhere on, or if it was available on any of these websites, and it wasn't, which we think that it should be, or at least noted on a couple of different areas, either on the homepage of the community college, under majors, under news, anything like that, just so that future students are able to have this information before deciding to enroll into a community college under these specific programs. If, you know, the college isn't necessarily doing what it's supposed to be doing to help students achieve the bachelor's degrees, or if students are achieving the bachelor's degrees and they're not necessarily getting jobs afterwards, and so forth. So we think that it could have been disseminated a little bit better. And some recommendations that we have are, again, just to disseminate or publish the results a little bit better, and to also have a longer report available. We do think that this shortened version is easy to read, and it was easy for us to evaluate and to look at this, but it could have been better to have a full report with the list of participants, the list of questions, the logic model, the learning outcomes as well, all of that, just so that we're able to get that information if we needed it to, but still having the shortened version available as well. And so with that, we thank you all for your time listening to us today. If you have any questions, we are available, and here is a list of our references. Thank you all.